If I'm gonna be perfectly honest, whenever I look at ChalkZone or most bits and pieces of ChalkZone itself, especially when it centers around the main character using chalk in a chalkboard along with his best friend made out of chalk, I had a difficult time trying to get into the show because of its creativity just not being the best. I'm just saying. If you make an ideal out of everything and you do an execution of it properly, then it will work out, but when it comes to ChalkZone itself, I did remember watching it, but I do not remember the episodes itself because, for me personally, it's somewhat bland. Which, for me personally, I really felt like it's one of the reasons on to why this, along with the Tech TV series, is where I forgot the most from the show. But since that we're in the Christmas season, let's go tackle When Santas Collide. Okay, I just need to get this out of the way because I know some people are gonna bring it up, knowing forward that this is one of the biggest problems of this episode. Rudy not being in the Christmas spirit with his family, so he decides to spend his Christmas spirit with his friends in the ChalkZone world. I need to make this perfectly clear. Some children act this way even during the holidays, and even if you can say that Rudy is being really unlikable in the first 10 minutes of this, when it comes to the second half of the episode where he tries to redeem himself, you really need to understand that if Timmy was in this position, he would probably do everything to make sure that every day is Christmas, even for the most selfish reasons. Look, I can sympathize Rudy's parents in this, since that they're into the Christmas spirit in their own way, but you need to understand that some children, even children like Rudy, aren't in the same Christmas tradition if their family's tradition is completely different. And while yes, I understand that when it comes to Rudy's age, he just can't be able to get over the fact that Santa doesn't exist, and he really sees that the Christmas spirit itself just isn't fun to him. He's just basically Jimmy Neutron from the Jimmy Neutron Christmas episode. Like, when people say that that episode is terrible, but not for people like me, doesn't really get the impression that there are different types of children who aren't in the Christmas spirit in the way compared to other people who are highly into the Christmas spirit. So when it comes to the ChalkZone, while yes, Rudy has caused some serious damages once we continue on in this episode, in the world of the ChalkZone, anything can happen. And for me personally, when there's no limitations when it comes to ChalkZone limitations in this world building, I honestly felt like that Rudy's life is just basically complete since that he has chalk, and can spend his time with his friends in the ChalkZone. And the way that Penny, who is one of Rudy's friends, wants Rudy to spend his time with his and Penny's family, Snaps, who is the blue character, denies. And if I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, if I was ever having the consideration on celebrating with my family's traditions versus in favor of a different tradition that the family would not agree on, I gotta be honest with you, Rudy's parents will probably find out about the ChalkZone itself if Rudy spend way more time in the ChalkZone rather than his family. I think that one of the reasons onto why people don't see this episode as a very good episode is the fact that they can't take the world building involving chalks seriously. Like, if you just replace the chalk with different elements like painting to make things come to life, or some other tools to make anything come to life, literally nothing would have changed. In fact, it would just probably be a lot more better instead of just having a chalk being on screen, but also moving for the majority of the episode's runtime. And if you ask me, I don't even consider this as a big issue if you're not really into this show compared to the people who are part of the fan base. When it comes to Rudy's character in the second half, well, he's willing to save Christmas while also being dressed as Santa because one of the Santas is either damaged badly or missing. Goes to show that he is just trying to do what the ChalkZone is when it comes to saving holidays. Like, if this happened in the real world, it would never happen. Mainly the ChalkZone's world or Rudy's world outside of the ChalkZone. And at the same time, I don't even think that if Rudy ever had the motivation to save Christmas in the ChalkZone, then the final minutes of this episode won't even work. In fact, it would make sense for people to go against Rudy's character in this. Look, it's not a good thing to have two families wait for you while you're into a different world, which leads to a huge disaster. But at the same time, I honestly felt like that Rudy in this episode in particular isn't supposed to be like every single character. In fact, him being like Jimmy from the Jimmy Neutron Christmas episode goes to show that there are some kids who aren't in the Christmas spirit completely, because Jimmy Neutron's situation is that he didn't get what he wanted because the gift itself was too valuable and too difficult for Santa to make. And in this, and during the bits while Rudy and Snaps are delivering gifts to all over ChalkZone because one of the Santas is freezing, so he wasn't injured or anything. He was freezing so that he can't be able to deliver gifts in such a short amount of time with the other Santas. Rudy and Snaps are mostly responsible by delivering the gifts to different houses. Now tell me, even though that in the ChalkZone it's supposed to be fancy, but at the same time, Rudy is still contributing something during Christmas, even if it has nothing to do with his family. And after that, he comes back to his world. Well, he dresses up as Santa, which the family or two are hoping that Santa does come, and apparently he did came. Tell me that this ending isn't as charming as you make it out to be, because for me personally, after watching this episode from beginning to end, even if it didn't give me good impressions of the first few minutes of it where Rudy is being a jerk, I actually admire of what his character is when it comes to his growth as the episode continued. In my opinion, after watching these Christmas episodes, or anything, there's always going to be a few Christmas episodes that have different writing choices. Like, I am fully aware that you cannot stand terrible Christmas episodes or material in general, but for this, you can say that it's not one of the best from your book, but for me personally, it's the definition of subverting the Christmas material, mainly of having one of the main characters being intentionally unlikable for the sake of driving the episode forward, so that character can become the thing that he's mostly against, but also enjoying it, since that he is mostly regretful for what he did, for what he acted early on. If you're willing to watch one Christmas episode that has one main character act unlikable for the sake for how they're developed during the holidays, especially Christmas, then believe it or not, you're honestly a noob when it comes to this type of subverting material. And what I mean by that, when it's done properly, unlike other materials that what's yet to come a decade after this episode aired. But this is not about subverting expectations. This is just mainly of what some kids, mainly Rudy, are like when it comes to holidays that they're not into, but then towards the end, they get into the Christmas spirit. Like, the only things I didn't like from this is the Santa's rapping. Like, you can make the argument that you can try to make Santas do anything in order to be cool, but rapping just isn't, it just doesn't fit right involving Santas. It doesn't. Like, the other songs from this is somewhat debatably okay, but when it comes to the rapping Santas, not even close. But to be honest with you, this Christmas episode is decent for my book, even though that my thoughts on the show gave me mixed opinions, but after watching episodes like this, I would have gotten the chance to binge watch this show, but even though I don't have plans to, but whenever I get the chance, whenever I'm actually in the mood to binge watching Nickelodeon shows, especially when it comes to old shows, this would definitely be one of them, and this episode gave me a good impression. Like, I understand that you do not like the episode, but when it comes to newcomers, if you bypass the 3 minutes and watch the entire Christmas special on your own, there's a chance that you might be able to get into this show, especially when it comes to its creativity. Like, yes, it's understandable that you may have issues with this episode, myself included, but since that it didn't have anything to do with Rudy's character in this episode gets a 6.5 out of 10. I'm not giving it a higher rating than I originally thought, but to be real with you, this episode alone is still harmless for what it is. Like, you need to understand that children like Rudy and Jimmy Neutron aren't the same children when it comes to being in the Christmas spirit. If anything, all it takes is just to see multiple Santas in a fantasy world, and you will probably get the picture completely to understand Rudy's character and his motivations. Because for me personally, it will probably take a while for me to understand the ChalkZone itself once I see more episodes in the future.